Thank you. So this is Chris Williams. Good evening, everyone. And maybe I can say an early Merry Christmas to you all because I know you're here because you are ready to start making those holiday cards for everyone. It's never too early, never too late to begin. So tonight we hope to provide a little bit of inspiration for you. And Ilse, I think if we just go ahead and straight go overhead, we can go ahead and get going. No need to keep looking at me. This is a close-up of our card that we're going to get to do tonight. It says Merry Christmas on it, and we have just kind of a very whimsical, kind of fun, funky little Santa. We're going to use a permanent fine point Sharpie marker tonight, and we're going to use some floating medium along with our FolkArt acrylics, and we're going to do a little bit of a watercolor type effect. And so this is a pattern and a card that I think anyone of any skill level and anyone of any age can have fun with tonight. So first, let me just tell you that blank greeting cards are available everywhere. And of course, Michael's has a great selection of them. A lot of times you'll find a blank greeting card flat like this rather than folded, but there is the indentation here. You can see that little bit of a groove there where it's easy to fold that card in half and create your 5x7 card in any format that you want. You can do it vertical, and of course you can do a horizontal card too. Sometimes they do come pre-folded, but a lot of times they come flat like that. So as you are shopping for your blank greeting cards, just know that they are available in a couple different ways. The pattern for tonight is this little one right here. I actually have mine on tracing paper here, but it was available on the registration sign-up sheet. So if you'd like to create this card, whether you're painting with me tonight or you're going to maybe paint at another time, maybe even perhaps watching the recording, all you need to do is take this and some of our artist transfer paper, which is commonly called gray graphite, and you're going to put your pattern directly on top of your blank greeting card and position it. You can kind of even use these side little guidelines to marry up along to the side of your card. And then I slip between or sandwich between the gray graphite with the graphite side down onto the blank greeting card. And then I use a tool called a stylus. This is like an artist dead ballpoint pen kind of sort of thing. And I will then trace over the main pattern lines that you see here of our Santa. If you want help with the lettering, you can trace over my letters that I have here. You might not want to do the greenery on the side. I would say just maybe reproduce the Santa Claus and maybe the lettering if that's helpful to you, as well as maybe just a circle for the wreath. And I'll share with you. This is mine. I'll hold it up close because I know my transfer lines are faint. But here you can see the circle that he's holding. That will be our wreath. I didn't even worry about giving him any ground. Just basic pattern lines is all I have transferred on mine. And that's all we need to do to start with our pattern for tonight. I'm going to set this aside, and here's my blank envelope. I'll set that over here. Let's just start with our card first, and we are going to do a lot of ink work first. Now, if any of you are lovers of your liner brush and you love to paint with a liner brush and do all the fine line work that way, by all means, you can do that. But I'm keeping it simple tonight. Like I said, any skill level, any age can do this pattern. I'm going to use a fine point permanent marker. This marker that I'm using happens to be an Identapen, and it has a bigger end and a smaller end. I'm going to use the smaller end tonight, but any fine point permanent ink marker. The best thing to do is to test it and make sure that it is permanent, because we're going to use water on top here. We're going to use some floating medium on top, as well as our acrylic paints. Excuse me. And you don't want your ink lines to bleed. So the first thing we're going to do is just uncap our little marker, and I'll keep this beside me here. I'll bring this up real close so you can see our finished piece. All of these little black lines, they can be painted on, like I said, if you like doing marker work, line work with your marker, or I'm sorry, line work with your thinned black paint, or we're going to do marker work tonight, just to kind of keep it very simple. So we're going to start out our pattern just using that fine marker, and we're going to just trace over these pattern lines that we have here that we've already transferred. And I'm going to bring this up so you can see closely. There's like the little star. If you are slightly off of the pattern line and you don't trace the pattern line exactly, don't worry, because these graphite lines can be erased once everything is on and your ink is dry and set. You can take a white vinyl or art eraser and you can erase these graphite lines away. So I'm just going to go ahead and continue with our design here. And I'm just going to carefully use that fine point permanent black ink marker. And I'm just going to go ahead and trace around. And if you're painting along with me tonight, you can do the exact same thing and just kind of follow along all of the little pattern lines. And you're just going to retrace over them. Okay? Very simple, very easy. So there's our hat already done. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to jump down to our little beard area. And I'm just going to kind of make a little wiggly lines here. I have Caitlin here at Plaid in the studios with me tonight. So she'll be following along and watching for any questions that you all might have. Caitlin, don't hesitate to interrupt me if you have any questions.
All right, will do.
Okay, great. Thank you. I noticed when we were waiting for you all to sign in that we had a lot of friends from our Let's Paint with Plaid Facebook group already joining us tonight. So I'm glad to see you all here in the audience. This is a very fun, like I said, super easy card that we can all do. Any of you have little ones at home or maybe even grandchildren, you can get together with them. Maybe you transfer the pattern for them and then they can take the outlines and do all the outline work. I'm just kind of roughly covering over those graphite pattern lines. And when we get to this circle that I have here, which is going to be my wreath, rather than draw a circle, I'm just going to take a line out and then a line in and a line out and a line in. I'll bring that up so you can see a little bit closer. And I'm just going around in the pattern of that circle, just kind of making a rough wreath shape, almost like you're zigzagging around in a circle. There's my wreath. And it didn't really connect. And then, of course, we'll do our letters. And I'm not going to worry about facial features right now. Okay, so if any of you are wondering why did I skip over the face or the mustache, I did on purpose right now. We're just going to go ahead and carry it through with our letters. This is a real fun technique. Years ago, we used to have very fancy pens that we used with our artwork, and we called this style of art pen and ink work. We would do all of the pen and ink, and then we would come back and we would put color washes or glazes of color on top of the ink work. We used special pens and special inks. Nowadays, we're just using a permanent fine point black marker. And I've got T, M, A, S, and I've got my Christmas done. So I now have Merry Christmas. I have Santa's hat, his star, basically his body, and an outline of the wreath. And what I want to do to give him some ground so that he's not floating, we're just going to take some black lines and kind of scribble a little ground or scribble a little floor for him. And we're going to just kind of work it horizontally. So I'm just kind of doing a few little slash marks across the base here. And that's all I'm doing for the ground. He's no longer floating. Now, if you want to give yourself a little bit of like a greenery garland here along kind of like an upside down L shape here on our card, that would be what I would do next. And just like we did our little wreath design here, we're going to kind of do the similar thing here. Let me bring it up this, and any of the dark lines that you see on here, they're kind of more like a little scribbly. I can point one out right here to you. See that little dark line right there? They're just kind of scribbles of little black lines. So you're just going to take a little line and you're just kind of putting a base down. Those are my little squiggles and wiggles. And we're going to continue that upwards. And then across the top of the card. These are just little wiggles and squiggles. Nothing fancy. So now we have that much done on our little Santa Claus. Now let's come back and do a little detail towards his face area. So when we look at our Santa, I'm going to bring my finished one up. We can look that he has kind of like little beady eyes. So his eyes are, let me see if it'll focus there for you. His eyes are like little tiny black circles. And so we want to give a little tiny black, and I did transfer my pattern on mine so you can kind of see. Let me come down a little bit. There we go. Now you can see the graphite lines. So I have my little circles already transferred for his eyes using that fine point Sharpie marker. I'm just going to draw that circle of the eye. Now we want to have some highlights in our eyes, and we can come back with some white paint if you lose the highlight now, or think about the face of a clock and think about the area where 1 o'clock is. It's in that upper right-hand corner, if you will, if there's a corner on a circle. And if you can fill in that little black circle minus 1 o'clock, and then you already have your highlight built. Now, if that was too difficult for you and by chance you already have a full black circle, don't worry, we can come back and we can put a white highlight on that circle eye using our white acrylic paint, okay? So you'll do the same thing with both eyes, kind of fill them in except for that 1 o'clock spot. And one thing I'm going to tell you, here's a pro tip. When you are painting eyes, obviously you want your eyes both to be the same shape or the same size. So if you do it and you're looking at it and you hold it up and you're looking at it yourself and you're saying, oh, something's wrong here, I'm not quite sure what it is. One eye looks slightly off, slightly different. Here's some pro tips. I've got 3 of them for you. You can take this and take your cell phone and quickly snap a picture of what you've done. When you look at the picture on your cell phone, a lot of times you can automatically, your eye is trained, automatically you can look at that and you can say, oh, this eye is slightly bigger than this eye. And you know how to make that adjustment or correction. Another thing to do is to take your piece to where you're standing in front of a mirror. So go into the bathroom, hold your card and look at the vision on the mirror in front of you. And by looking at this in reverse through the mirror, you can also see where your design might be slightly off. The third way to look at it is to hold it upside down. And again, I can see that this eye is just slightly bigger than that eye. And sometimes slightly is not enough to make a big difference to you, but if it is, then just go back and slightly make that adjustment, making one eye slightly bigger so that they are equal in size. So remember those 3 ways. You can always check your eyes and make sure they're good. Now, let's look at my finished card here. I did not outline the nose, so we're not going to worry about that. But when you go back to looking at the eyes, there is a line. Here's our little circle that we have already. And there is a line that goes, and it's kind of like almost a rainbow shape. So we're going to start here at the top, come down on this side, start here at the top again, and come down on that side. So we want to make that little bit of an arcing rainbow shape. Let me get this out of camera. There, we can focus now. We're going to make this line here on top of both eyes. And sometimes it really does help to start in the middle at the top of the eye, going down on both sides, rather than trying to go up and over, okay? So if you will, then just lightly take that pen and mark a little bit of a line off to the left and then to the right on both of your eyes. Okay, I'm going to make this a little bit higher here. There we go. So now we have the black line on our eyes. Now let's look at the beard and the sides of his hair. There's just ever so lightly fine little wispy lines of the black. We're not going to worry about trying to do exact lines. We're just going to make a few little wispy lines. So here on this outside part of his hair, we might come in a little bit towards his face. We might come out a little bit, in and out. And that's about all you need to worry about. Let me bring that up so you can see it close. And then within the beard area, we're going to add just a few more little lines. And it's just kind of like little wispy lines. You might want to add a little bit of a curl or a swirl. It's not a lot of detail, just a few little lines. You can even give yourself a little bit more of a direction here than what I have. And I'm going to bring one down here. Okay. So I just added a few more little lines to our beard. And I'm also going to just come inside the center of the mouth. The mouth is right here in the middle between his pretty good sized mustache. And that's almost like a little triangle of black there. He's got a little bit of an open mouth. So just before you get to the top of the bottom lip, and between those two mustaches, we're going to kind of make that triangle with a rounded bottom and kind of fill that in. Okay. All right. Now I think that's about all I'm going to worry with right now. So let's go ahead and cap our marker and let's get some paints out. Any questions yet, Caitlin?
Nope.
Okay. All right. The first color I want to get out is what we call Cool Bisque. This is a great color to use as a Caucasian skin color. I'm going to get out a little bit of Pueblo. Pueblo is like that terracotta orangey brown color. And then I'm going to also get a little bit of our apple red out. If you're doing more than one card, I might even suggest, and you're doing all the same design, I might even suggest that you do a lot of a, what do I want to say, an assembly line type. What paint is I'm being used? Okay, I can show you. I am using the multi-surface paints. This is FolkArt. And when we say multi-surface, this is a paint that means it goes on all types of surfaces. It goes on wood, on glass, on fabric, on tin, on terracotta, on glazed ceramics, on paper mache, on our paper note cards tonight. This is a paint that goes on multiple surfaces. Now, if you don't have the multi-surface FolkArt, you can use the matte FolkArt paints too. So let me just add another color here. I'm going to put out just a little bit of, I'll go through our colors one more time. This is berry wine. So let me just go through the colors. This was Pueblo. This is our skin color. It's called Cool Bisque. This is apple red. And this is a deep burgundy that's called berry wine. And I'm going to go ahead and get two greens out right now too. And the two greens I'm going to put out are classic green, which is a good, bright, basic Christmassy green color. And then I'm going to add a brighter yellowy green color called lime green. So we want to put a little bit of that bright yellowy green color. And one more, and we need just the tiniest little bit of this color. And this is our yellow ochre. So if you don't have yellow ochre, any yellow would work for this the step I'll use that for. And then I'm going to use our floating medium. Now, floating medium does not slow down the drying time. What floating medium does is it makes your paints more transparent. And that's what we want when we want to create that kind of watercolory effect. So let's start first now on his face area. And if you have any of your graphite lines showing, your ink should be dry enough. You can take a white vinyl eraser and you can erase over any area that maybe you didn't want to show. I just shown you that it does work. I did erase some lines here in my hat band, but I'm not too worried about it because we can then continue painting over things too. So I'm sorry, go ahead.
Did you say if you could use this process on a canvas or wood surface?
Yes, yes, most definitely. I'm doing it on a card tonight because that's the theme here for Michael's. This is the 12 days of Christmas card making. But this same pattern could be used on a canvas. It could be used on a wood piece. It could be used on glassware. Could be used on terracotta, on paper mache. This pattern can go on just about any surface, even fabric, a little tote bag. So have fun with this pattern. If you're painting a card tonight, maybe paint this same design on something else that you can then give, and then your card becomes part of the gift as well. So I think that's something fun to think about. So let's start working on our face. And what I started to say when I was talking about erasing graphite lines with your white vinyl eraser, I did not take the time to erase my nose. My nose is still there. Oops, let me come back so I can focus. My nose pattern is still there. My mustache pattern is still there. And the sides of the hair is still there. So it gives me kind of a basis to know where to go. And I'm okay with that. So I'm going to take a small flat brush right now. Let me get, let's see, what have I got here? I'm going to take a number 6 flat brush, and I'm going to load that flat brush. Yeah, that's probably it. I'm going to load that flat brush with my floating medium first. I'm going to load both sides of the flat brush. I'm never scooping into the puddle of paint. I'm pulling the paint out from the puddle. So I now have a really nice amount of floating medium in this flat brush. And what I'm going to do now is I'm going to corner load or side load, just kind of stroking a corner of the brush into my puddle of my skin color. Again, that's Cool Bisque. So I have a brush that has floating medium and Cool Bisque in it. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to paint these flesh areas. So I'm just going to slightly tap that color on. And I'm holding the brush, the side that has the paint in it, the Cool Bisque, is going towards the outside areas. I'm leaving the side that has mostly the floating medium in it towards the inside of our face. So you can see it's starting to darken more towards the outside edges of my design. And I'm just going to go ahead and follow along that whole face shape, keeping the Cool Bisque side of the brush towards the outside, and I'm allowing the white to come in towards the center of the face. Once I've gone around both sides and across the forehead and over the tops areas of the mustache, I now want to start separating where that nose stands out. So the Cool Bisque side of my brush is going to be right up next to the bridge of the nose on both sides. So I can either do one side this way and then flip my brush over and do the next side, or I can even turn my work upside down and keep the brush so that the Cool Bisque is again right up along next to that nose area. So this is what I have right now. The next thing I want to do is I want to come back with just that brush, always loading with the floating medium. And I'm going to now tip just a tiny little bit of the corner into our Pueblo, blending that on the palette. I don't want real dark, severe color going to my face, but this is going to be my shading color. So with that Pueblo side, I'm now going to go just across the top of the forehead here, just deepening that just a little bit. And I'm raising that up so you can see. So that shaded the forehead just a little bit more. And I'm going to use this same brush to go over around the bridge of the nose. The sides along the nose. So I'm kept the Pueblo next to that bridge of the nose. And now I'm just going to fill in that inside of the nose there a little bit with our skin tone color. which was again, the cool bisque. So I'll bring that up so you can see I am using acrylic paints. These are the FolkArt multi-surface paint colors that I'm using tonight. And I'm using floating medium to allow our acrylic paints to act like watercolor paints. Now what I want to do is I do want to squeeze my brush between the paper towels to remove that Pueblo and the floating medium. And what I want to do now, excuse me, is load that brush back up again with our floating medium, a little bit of our cool bisque, our skin color on the corner of the brush. And the side that has the cool bisque in it is the side that's also going to go into the apple red. So I'm going to make a light pink now to create the blush on our Santa's cheeks. So the cool bisque and the apple red blending on the palette here is going to soften that apple red into a very soft pink now. And that's what's going to create these cheeks here on our Santa. And I saw that someone just asked, is there an alternate to the cool bisque? You have it right now with all of these colors here, including and the white that I did not put out yet. If you take a little bit of white, yellow ochre, and apple red, you will make this skin color. Again, it's a little bit of white, yellow ochre, and apple red. You can make a skin color. All right, so now I've got the floating medium in my brush. I have my skin color in my brush. I have a little bit of apple red, and I'm blending on the palette. I'm making that soft kind of pinky blushy color. And let's take a look at our finished one. If you painted a Santa with me before, and I know many of you have, I love rosy cheek Santas. So every single one I do is just about as rosy as the next one. I'm going to keep the pink side of my brush loaded to the bottom of his cheeks or closest to his mustache area. And again, I'm just going to pat that color on, and I'm just going to add the rosy cheek here, starting close to the hairline and then working towards the nose. So the longer I kind of pat that on, you can see I'm placing that color very, very softly on his face. And that's because I have the floating medium in my brush. That floating medium is acting like a medium to make the colors more transparent. So we're just brushing this on, patting it on. And if you want it a little bit rosier, add just a touch more apple red. If you like it where you are, then stop. You can even let this completely dry and set, and then come back and add a little bit more of that apple red / pinky color and make them rosier. So now we have our rosy cheeks. Let's move on now and start working on to let his face set up a little bit. Let's move on to start working on some of the larger areas here. Real quickly, let's get a little bit of green out. I'm going to use that same little flat brush, and we're going to do a small little green area. And that is, again, with our floating medium. I did rinse out the flesh colors. I'm using the same brush. This is a number 6 flat. And let's just pick up our lightest green here. This is lime green. And I didn't do a corner load. I'm just doing the full flat of the brush, but I'm pulling some of this light green color out. And let's just kind of wash over our mittens. He's got 2 mittens, both showing. And then once we kind of have the mittens in, all painted with a wash of color with using our floating medium, we're now going to come back and we're going to shade them a little bit right where the fur cuff is. So we're going to come up next to that fur cuff with a little bit of our darker green. And that darker green is going to be our classic green. So I'm not going to clean my brush. I'm just going to pick up a little bit of our classic green and then just kind of bring that right on the mitten, right up next to the cuff. So you can take a real good look right here at this. See, it's how it's a little bit darker. That's all I'm going to do there. I'm going to swish those colors out, and let's start working on the red of his outfit. I'm going to jump to a little bit larger brush, and this brush that I'm using now is a number 8. You could also use a number 10. I am filling that brush again with our floating medium first. Both sides, I want a fair amount of floating medium in that brush. And now I'm going to pick up a little bit of our apple red on one corner of the brush, kind of floating that out. And we're going to start on the red of his hat here. So when you look at the hat is primarily dark here where it meets along the cuff of his hat. And then on this bottom part here, so as you're looking at the stocking cap, it would be the right side or the underneath side of his stocking cap. So I'm going to hold my brush that has the side that has our apple red closest to those areas. Patting that color on, I'm bringing the red along the hat, but right up next to where the cuff of the hat is. And then we're going to do the same thing here on the bottom, bringing a little bit of color. And again, this is our apple red and our floating medium. Keeping the apple red on this stocking cap part to the right-hand side or the bottom side of our stocking cap. And I'm going to bring it a little bit darker here underneath on this hat part, underneath that fold. All right. Now what I want to do is bring a little bit of this apple red and floating medium on the rest of the hat, but it's very, very light, very transparent. So in this case, you're going to use a little bit more floating medium, less paint. And so now we have very much what looks like a watercolory effect of his hat. And we're now going to move on to his jacket or his coat, doing the same technique. I have a little bit darker color here where the cuffs meet the, let me pick up a little more apple red, where the cuffs meet the little fluff here at his fur trim. So I'm putting a little bit more red and I'm working it up a little bit. So we have basically kind of red, but it's darker where it meets the fur. And now let's work on the body of his coat. And what I'm going to do there is just start here on the side and bring a long swoopy strokes down. Again, using my floating medium, kind of blending that color out, picking up a little bit of red. And then I'm going to kind of fade that as I come in towards the center of his coat, picking up a little bit more red as you want to add, introduce more. And then I'll stop about halfway across his body. And then I'm going to do the same thing on the opposite side. So if you want, you can even turn your work upside down so that you bring more of the red. And it's okay if you go over this wreath area that we made the mark. So I'm intensifying the red a little bit more towards the outside of his body. I'm using less paint and more floating medium as we work our way towards the center. And it's again okay if you go over these buttons too if you want. Bring that red up underneath and close to the beard. Okay, I'm going to turn that back around so I can see what it looks like right side up. That looks okay to me. Now what I want to do is I want to deepen these areas a little bit more. So I'm going to keep the brush that has the red in it, but this time I'm going to pick up a little bit of our berry wine. Berry wine on the same side of the brush that you had the apple red. And we're going to repeat those same areas of shading. So I'm going to add a little bit more berry wine wherever I added our first applications of red. This is going to be ever so slight because of the use of our floating medium. And this is just almost kind of like retracing the steps that we just did, just for the shaded areas. So once you finish on your hat, then you can bring these colors down onto the sleeves or the wrist areas, and then down onto the sides of the body of our little Santa here. And I want to keep the body fairly light in color.
And what brushes are you using again?
I'm using a flat brush. This happens to be a number 8. You could also use a number 10. Michael sells a good variety of flat brushes. And really any flat synthetic brush is about what you need for this. You don't have to worry about special watercolor brushes.
And is that one of the one-stroke brushes?
Yes, it is. All right. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to deepen the base here, his hemline. And I just kind of took a little bit of that burgundy or berry wine color, and I'm patting that across the bottom here of him. And that's all I'm going to worry about now for our red areas. So let's go ahead and rinse our brush out. There's a little bit of our yellow ochre here on the palette. I'm just going to fill our little star here at the cap, at the tip of his stocking cap here. And I did not use floating medium for this. I'm not worrying about trying to get this to look like a watercolor effect because I've got a special trick I'm going to show you with that. So that was just painted in solid with our yellow ochre, and that was the star here on the end of our little stocking cap. Now what I'm going to do for the hair and for the hair of his beard, his mustache, and his hair on the sides of his head, that'll be our next step. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take my liner brush, and we need to add some white to our palette. So I'm going to add a little bit of wicker white. If you don't have wicker white, titanium white would work as well. And I'm going to use a liner brush. And what I want to do first is, oh, I'm sorry, I didn't have my black out either. Let's get some black out. The black I'm going to use is Licorice. Just a small amount is all you need. And what I want to do is I want to make a very pale gray, and you can brush mix this, or if you want, you can take a palette knife and you can use a palette knife to brush mix or to make a very pale gray. I'm going to bring this up so you can see mine. I have actually kind of a variety of grays in here in the beard that you see because I was brush mixing, and I kind of liked that rather than mixing all one value of gray. So if you want to brush mix with me, that's what we're going to do next. I did dip my brush into a little bit of water, and I'm going to put a little water here on my wax paper palette between the two. And I'm going to bring some of my white out into this puddle of water. And then I'm going to just tip a tip of my liner brush, a very small amount. Let me bring that up so you can see. It's ever so, there we go, ever so small, a little bit of black on the tip of that brush. You don't want a lot of black because, of course, black is a strong color, and it will turn really dark very quickly. So you want to just brush mix a little bit at a time. You can even add a little bit more until you get a pleasing, like medium gray value that you want. And then what you're going to do is every so often add a little bit more white, or maybe add a little bit more black. And that's what's going to give you the varying degrees of hair color here on his beard. And the hair is done from the bottom of the beard working up towards his mustache. We're going to take our liner brush, excuse me, we're going to take our liner brush, start down here at the bottom, and we're just going to do short little pulls or wisps of color with that liner brush. I'll bring this up so you can see a few that I've done already. And kind of follow the direction of the curls that you've already kind of started on your beard. This part, we're not using the floating medium. We just are thinned our paint a little bit with a little bit of water because we are going to need the paint to flow a little bit. And so I'm just kind of doing short little choppy strokes and overlapping a few as I work my way up. I'm not filling in the entire beard. You can see here that I've kind of left spaces between some of my hair strokes, and because this is not the final step, we're going to come back and add a little bit more. So I just want to leave some open pockets here. And while we have our brush loaded in this color mix, let's go ahead and add some here on the sides of his head. Some of this little hair is going to curl in towards his face, maybe over on top of his cheeks. Some may kind of fluff out, going out onto the sides. Do both sides of his head. And while you have this color in your brush and mixed, then you can also do a little bit of an eyebrow. The eyebrows are going to be heavier or thicker as they are closer towards the bridge of the nose, and they get thinner as they go out. And all I'm doing when I do an eyebrow is I am going to start here on the inner part close to the bridge of the nose, and I'm just going to tap. And I'm tapping larger size here, and as I tap going out, of course, it's going to get a little bit smaller. So you'll do that to both sides of the eye, and this is with our gray mix. And then we're going to start on the other side a little bit bigger, tapping as we work and kind of have those go out in the arch, like almost like a rainbow shape. You don't want them straight across the top of his eye. Okay. All right, now let's go ahead and let's put just a little tiny bit of gray in the mustache. Most of the mustache is going to be white, but let's go ahead, and this mustache is pretty wide or deep, maybe is a better way to say it. Starts all the way up to the flesh and it comes all the way down to here. So what we want to do is with our liner brush, we're just going to stroke out long strokes if you can, and kind of give yourself a little bit of a gray in the mustache. Not a lot, but just a little bit. And do both sides. And you're using just the tip of your liner brush with this gray mixture. I want to make sure my centers meet here. There we go. Okay. I'm going to go ahead and remove the gray from my brush right now. Just swishing into my water. And I'm going to take that liner brush and I want to brush mix with it just a little bit of that light pinky color again. So I'm going to take a little bit of my Cool Bisque, the skin color, and just a little tiny bit of our apple red. And I say little tiny bit because kind of like working with black into the white, it will get too red too quick. So you just want a nice little pinky color. What we're going to do next is we're going to draw on a little bit of a lip. It's a very small little lip, and it's just almost like this was like a rainbow. The lip is going to be more like a smile line. So with this pink mixture, let's go ahead and paint on the lip. All right. And now I'm going to rinse that out of my brush. And our gray is dry enough that we can now go directly white on top of our gray. And you can go as white as you want, or allow your gray to be allow your beard to be more gray. This is kind of where you get to play around, and you're the artist. You get to decide how white or how gray you want his beard to be. But basically, we're just kind of retracing those same steps using our liner brush with our Wicker white without the gray this time. And we're painting a few strokes over on top of what we've already got down there. Follow the curve of his hair curling. Pick up more white as you feel like you need to. You're not completely covering the gray unless you want a full white beard, but you've already got the gray on there as a nice little complement or an undershadow color. So leave some of your gray to show. And you can even kind of let some of your black line work show. So you don't want to cover all of that up either. It's just when I'll bring up my final one, so you can see it's just a little bit of the black line work showing. It's not a full face on 100% black magic marker line. You'll do the same thing on the sides of his head to where his hairline. Allow some of the white to curl out from the head. Allow some of it to curl onto your blushed cheeks. When you are ready, you can also continue with this using that liner brush and your wicker white. And let's go ahead and I do put more white on my mustache. Allow some of that gray to show through, but I had the white deeper or brighter, maybe I should say, on the mustache than I did on the hairline and the beard. And so this kind of curls up to give him a really nice, big, thick mustache. And I'm going to cover over some of the black of the mouth. If your mouth is too big, maybe he's singing the Hallelujah chorus. Maybe he's saying, ho, ho, ho. And then one more thing we're going to do with our liner brush and our white is we're going to tone down those eyebrows. We do want some of the gray to show through, but I'm just going to take that same little patty motion that we did to put the eyebrows on, and I'm going to pat over them. So you can look at my two eyebrows. One is just the gray, and one is the gray plus the white on top. So now I'm going to use that liner brush tip and just pat on the eyebrow. And there we go. All right. So now the next thing we want to do is we want to go ahead, excuse me, and we want to give him some buttons here down below. We've kind of outlined them a little bit with our marker. And the buttons that I have here are just simply a wash of our black. So I'm going to fill my brush with, this is a small flat brush, a number 6 flat brush. And I'm going to fill it with our floating medium and then just a little bit of our licorice. And I'm just going to kind of dab that licorice side of the brush into the space here that we've kind of left to be our little buttons. And then I'm going to rinse that brush out. And now I think we're ready to do some of the greenery. And then we'll save the very last to accent his little fluffy parts of his hat and his 2 wrist areas. So let's talk about this greenery. Right now we kind of have a base of our marker lines. So what we want to do is we're going to use our 2 different greens and we're going to use floating medium. So I'm going to stick with this small little flat brush. I'm going to load it with some of our floating medium. And then I'm going to load the full flat of the brush, not just corner loading this time, into my darker of the 2 greens. And this is my classic green. It's a great green to use for Christmas painting. And what I want to do on this is I want to just start with that garland. I'm up on the chisel. Let me hold it this way. I'm up on the chisel edge of the brush. That means just the flat part here, just the tip of the bristles. And what I'm doing is just kind of dancing that brush along. I'll do it sideways here so that you can see, but you're going to be down over yours like this. I don't want to do that because then you'll just see the top of my hand. But you're going to dance that. Let me show you my finished one here. It's not straight lines all the way down. They're short little choppy lines, kind of almost like zigzagging back and forth on top of the black line work that we've already created. And we're just using that chisel edge to kind of make like a garland. So you want to make that garland coming down the side and then going across the top, and every so often pick up a little bit more of your floating medium because you want this color to be more faint, more transparent, more like the color wash. And I'm almost to the end here. You can see how precise this is. Not. It's very, very simple. You're just kind of dancing the tip of that brush along the whole little area, kind of creating like a little bit of a garland. Now what we want to do is I'm going to rinse that out. I want to pick up my liner brush. My liner brush is what I'm going to use to kind of create with my, I'm going to bring some of my floating medium over here on my liner brush with the lightest green color, which is our lime green, and our floating medium. We want to make a very transparent, bright, limey green color. And every so often here in the greenery garland that we just made, we're going to make like a little tiny bit of an evergreen. So I want you with that liner brush, just make like one long little pull. Then you're going to make little pulls coming off the sides. So you're going to make, let me draw it out for you because that might be too small for you to see. You're going to make one long line, and then you're going to make little lines, and you can go out like this, or well, let me do it this way first. You can make almost like you're doing like evergreen, if that makes sense. Think about Christmas evergreen. You're doing that sort of thing, but a very short little space. They're very little, they're not long. And I'll show you a few of mine up close here. You can see there's one right here. Here's another one right there. And I have some going facing downward in the garland. I have some going facing, branching out in the garland. Some are branching out towards the inner part of the card. Some might be branching out towards the outside. So you're just going to here and there stick in little twigs of like a little greenery, okay? And that's done with the liner brush, our floating medium, and the bright lime green. And they're, like I said, they're not big, so be careful. Don't overwhelm your painting. Just kind of tuck them in here and there. And I'm just going to continue working on mine while you're working on yours. This is the same greenery that you'll do to the outside of your envelope should you choose to trim your envelope like I did mine. And I'll show you the envelope again before the class is over with. If you want to tuck in a few of the sprigs of greenery with your dark green, you sure can. I'm just adding a few little sprigs here and there. And you'll do this on both sets of your garland here, along the side as well as up at the top. And these don't have to be perfect, so you can move along pretty quickly. They're kind of like nestled in or hidden in the garland. I'm going to show you mine right now. I'm bringing it up. This is the side that I have done. And it just kind of makes the garland a little bit fuller, a little bit thicker. And we'll do the same thing across the top. Again, I have a puddle of floating medium over here, and I have some of our bright lime green. And I'm just touching down with the very tip of my brush, kind of creating that little bit of a sprig of greenery. They're not all the same shape. They're not all flowing in the same direction. Some are going towards the inside of the card. Some lean more towards the outside. And kind of once you kind of get the hang of just kind of painting a few of these, they go real quickly. And it's just really kind of more a filler. So there we go with that. The next thing we're going to add to our garland is we're going to come back with our red, and let's use our stylist. And we're going to use a stylist to kind of create little red berries. So we're just going to put little dots of red. Some of them could be dotted with apple red. Some could be dotted with berry wine, because not all berries are the same color. And some can be dotted in like a triangle, like you got 3 berries together. Sometimes it could just be a pair of berries, and maybe even one time or two that could just be a single berry. So you want to go ahead and add your little red dots now, which will be your berries. They are nestled in amongst your greenery that you've already got painted. And like I said, make them in 3s, make them in 2s, make a single berry here and there. Add some berry wine berries too. Maybe the berry wine ones are only the 2s or the 3s, and or the 2s and the 1s as an accent. This trim that we're doing right now is exactly the same garland trim that you're going to do on your envelope. And like I said earlier, when we were first talking about creating the card, I would suggest if you're doing multiples, lay them all out and do all the pattern transferring at one time, then do all of the ink work at one time, then perhaps do all of, one colored. When you're working on the red, do all of the red. Do assembly line, and I think you'll find it'll go so much faster for you. Okay, be careful not to get too many berries. Don't overwhelm your garland. And then also remember, these dots could be dimensional right now because you've used a stylist here. So be careful that you don't put your hand over on top of them or smudge them. Let's talk now about the greenery here of our wreath. Basically, that's done exactly the same way. So let's start with our flat brush and some of our floating medium and our classic green, the darker of the two greens. And we're just going to kind of make some pokes out, kind of following that line that we started with our black marker. Let some of your greenery lines using the chisel edge of your brush and floating medium cross over the black lines and kind of layer a few more. You want some of these little sticks or twigs of greenery to go beyond the wreath form shape and some to come inside towards the center. I'll bring up mine so you can see what I've done on mine. This is all classic green. I use just the chisel edge of the brush and floating medium. And now we're going to rinse that out, grab that liner brush, the same mixture here of our floating medium and our lime green, and add a few of those same little sprigs. So we're going to do one little stroke and then kind of have a few more strokes coming out from the side there. And we'll come back and do some berries within our wreath too. So basically, this is the same thing, same technique that we did on our garland, but we're just giving our wreath a little bit of a twist of the two greens and some sprigs of winter greenery. And maybe one more here. There we go. Now I'm going to go ahead and add the red dot work on mine of my berries. I'm going to use my stylist again. And I will do some of our berries in groups of 3 with apple red. This is a smaller area than our garland, so you don't want to overwhelm your berries. If your apple red berries are not showing up against Santa's cloak, that would be a good spot or a good area where maybe you could pick up your berry wine and add a few berries of berry wine. They should show up more on top. Remember, some of your berries could be in groups of 3. Some could be just a single berry by itself. I think I'm going to stop with mine. I don't want to overberry mine. And now what I'm going to do is I'm going to concentrate a little bit more on this ground that we kind of put in with our little dashes of color here of the permanent marker. I want to add just a little bit of a gray here, kind of like that same gray we were playing around with here on his beard area. I'm going to take a flat brush. This is a number 8 flat brush. I'm going to fill it with our floating medium, and it doesn't matter that my floating medium is getting dirty from other colors. I'm not worried about that at all. Loading the flat brush up with my floating medium. And if you have a little bit of this mixture made, go ahead and use that. If not, go ahead and dip a little bit into the white with the floating medium and then chisel in just a little bit of our black and make a gray off to the side here. Again, you still have your floating medium in your brush. And I'm going to take that chisel edge and I'm just going to scissor. I'm just going to chisel edge, go back and forth and put a little bit of color on there. Now you could see that my gray here is much lighter than my gray here. So maybe I decide I need a little bit more black. So I can come back and deepen that gray mixture. Again, still kind of using the chisel edge of my brush, and I'm just kind of chiseling to give myself a little bit of ground. And it's up to you how dark or how light you want that gray to be. I'm adding just a little bit more to kind of give me a little bit more intense ground here. There we go. And that's my base then. So now what we need to think about is we need to think about his furry parts, his cuff and his the furry cuff of his hat, and of course on his wrists here. Mine, I did not even bother painting them a color. I left it the card blank, but what I did was I introduced our FolkArt Glitterific in the hologram, and I put that directly on top of those areas, and that is what left the sparkle that you see on our card. And who doesn't love a holiday card that has sparkle? Our hologram Glitterific. If you're not familiar with Glitterific paints, Michael sells these. This is one of the best glitter paints on the market. Glitterific paints are multiple glitter particle sizes. Let me see if I can, I guess I need something darker. Let's see if I can find something dark. I don't think I have anything here. Maybe I can do it against this. This is a printout here, but maybe I can go across that there. Can you see against this green bottle that I just did? I just put a little bit of Glitterific here on against the dark color of my green here. I'm going to raise this up, and what I want you to look at is look for the particle sizes. You're going to see sugar fine little bits of glitter. You're going to see large glitter flakes. This is the hologram color, so it shows many, many different colors. It reflects many, many different colors. This is a clear gel base paint. The Glitterific paint is not a color, it's clear, but it's the glitter particles that make it a color. So when you look at Glitterific colors, there's several different colors in the line. This is the holographic one. And what I'm going to do now is I'm just going to take my palette knife. You can also use a brush. And I'm just going to put a little bit here on the cuff area, or the area that I want extra sparkle. So I'm going to put a little bit there on the cuff and use the tip of my palette knife to build it up. And there you have this fabulous sparkle for his fur. You can also take a paintbrush. And this is very thick paint, so it's going to be almost kind of globby or gloopy. And I'm going to take that and pat that on. You can use a paintbrush, you can use a palette knife, whatever you want to use as far as a tool. This is water-based, and so it cleans up very nicely out of your brushes, cleans up nicely off of your palette knife. But you're just going to pat that Glitterific hologram wherever you want to add a little bit more sparkle. And I did this hologram on just the fur areas, on the trim on his hat, and then at his wrist. And I'm going to let that set and dry. Now I'm going to talk to you a little bit about another Glitterific that we have. And this is, let me do this. This was the very first glitter paint on the market. This is called Extreme Glitter. This is nothing but a sugar fine glitter, but it's in a tinted base. And I have the Peridot here. I'm just showing you some optional things that you can do to trim out your cards. Everyone loves sparkle and glitter during the holiday season. It kind of helps things look a little bit more festive. So if you want to add a little bit of a green sparkle to your card, why not? I'm going to take this. This again is our FolkArt Extreme Glitter. It's in the Peridot color. This you can see is not clear. You can see that there is color to this, but what the glitter is in this color combination is a very fine, fine, sugar fine glitter. And I'm just going to dab this very carefully because my red berries are still a little wet. So I'm just going to dab bits of it here and there in the Greenery garland, trying not to touch any of my red berries right now. When this dries, this is spectacular. This just adds a little bit more shimmer, a little bit more glimmer. And it's just another little optional step. You don't have to do this, but I'm just trying to share with you. Everyone loves sparkle for the holidays. So I'm going to add a little bit on the wreath as well. And I'm just kind of dabbing this on in between those berries. And then one more little bit of glitter if you want to add any glitter pizzazz to your star. This was just plain our yellow ochre that we based in the star. There's also Treasure Gold, which is a very highly pigmented, beautiful metallic gold you could do on that. But if you like glitter, in the FolkArt multi-surface paint line, there is a chunky gold glitter part of the paint line. So I'm going to put just a little bit of that out onto our palette here. And this is part of the not Glitterific line and not the extreme glitter line. This is actually part of the paint line. And this is, again, the FolkArt multi-surface, and then the color is chunky gold. And it's not sugar fine and it's not quite flake-like, but it's a different value or a different size glitter particles. And I'm just going to add that onto our star. So when we look at our star is going to have some sparkle as well. And why not? Stars should sparkle, right? And that's all there is to my little Merry Christmas, little Santa Claus. If you had not left a white highlight in your eyes when you penciled or marked them in, go back and with either your stylist or the point of your round liner brush and go ahead and add a little bit of a white highlight. I think of those at like 1 o'clock on the face of the clock. If you have any lines showing around your lettering, remember a white vinyl eraser can erase off any of your graphite lines. And this, my friends, is all there is to it. Every 2 cards are going to be completely different. He looks maybe a little bit more primitive, I think, than this one does. This guy looks a little bit more jolly. It's whatever you want to do. When I did mine, I did sign my name here along the bottom, and I promised that I was going to show you what the envelope looks like one more time. And I did that same little very free form garland. I did that in an L shape here on the face of our envelope. Here's our envelope here. If you wanted to, you could even do something fun on the back of the envelope, maybe here where you usually sometimes put a seal. Maybe a nice big wreath would be pretty here, because who doesn't love to have a beautiful envelope in the mail? And then you can't wait to tear into it to see what is on the inside. But this is a great little way to kind of make some handmade holiday cards at home. And like I said, if you're doing more than one, do them in an assembly line manner, because it'll go along so much quicker, so much easier. And why not get the kids to come help you? They can make these little wiggly, squiggly lines with the magic marker. I think it would be fun to see what a child can do as well. And I have a treat for you. I have a show and tell, a sneak preview of November the 26th. Will be our next Michael's class. And if you go looking for it now to register, it's not quite up yet. I'm just going to sneak preview tonight. We turned in all of the patterns and the supply list and everything into Michael's. And I checked just before class. It has not yet been uploaded, but I know they're so good about it. It will be uploaded in the next day or two. So keep looking for November the 26th. That again will be a Tuesday night. Will be at 7:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Jessie Jennings is going to be here, and she will be teaching 3 different wood cookie ornaments. I've mounted them on a little board here for show and tell. This is one of those typical little wood cookies. You can, so a lot of times you can buy a whole bag of them at Michael's. These are the little wood forms, and she's chosen a very pale pastel color. You're going to paint a wreath, a tree, and some holly. And I think we went face on. Can we go overhead one more moment? I want to show them up close. There's all kinds of little flat back gems on here, which is going to add so much sparkle when you hang these on your tree. Can you all see the little flat back gems? This is such a fun little project. So keep in mind the 26th of November, and we will be looking forward to seeing you in that class at that time. Any last minute questions, Caitlin, before I sign off?
Nope.
Okay, okay. Well, thank you all. I hope you had a good time tonight painting your Merry Christmas Christmas card with me. And I hope that you enjoy making a few of these and giving them to your family and friends. And have a little special touch to your gifts this year with a handmade card. Until next time, thank you very much for tuning in and joining us this evening. I hope you did have a fun time in class. I'm Chris Williams, and I look forward to seeing you in the next class.